I'm not a military analyst or anything like that. I can't say. I mean, war to end wars, I mean, what today, there's maybe 20 or 30 conflicts, armed conflicts going on in the world, so it didn't do anything like that. It stopped Hitler and Nazi Germany. The tyranny of that was killed.
The Battle of Normandy in 1944, codenamed Operation Overlord, was the invasion of Nazi-occupied Western Europe by the Western Allies. It remains one of the best-known battles of World War II, and in common parlance, the expression D-Day is now invariably understood to refer to the starting date of this battle, June 6, 1944. The operation began with overnight paratrooper landings and a massive early morning amphibious assault. The fighting continued for 2.5 months before the German forces in Normandy retreated. The attack had been long in coming. From the moment when the British had been forced to withdraw from France in 1940 in the face of an overwhelming German onslaught, planners had plotted a return to the continent. Only in that way would the Allies be able to confront the enemy's power on the ground, liberate northwestern Europe, and put an end to the Nazi regime. Supreme Commander of the Allied Expeditionary Force, General Dwight D. Eisenhower, called the operation a crusade in which we will accept nothing less than full victory. The D-Day cost was high. By nightfall, more than 9,000 Allied soldiers were dead or wounded, but more than 100,000 had made it ashore and began the march across Europe to defeat Hitler. Normandy is one of the most beautiful regions of France, steeped in history from the Knights of William the Conqueror to the brave soldiers who stormed the beaches one June morning. The visitor to Normandy today will find many reminders of D-Day. Most noticeable are the beaches, which are still referred to on maps and signposts by their invasion codenames. At significant points there are relics, plaques, memorials, or small museums. Nobody in the area is likely to forget Operation Overlord for a long time, and every year hundreds of commemorations take place.
A landing was made this morning on the coast of France by troops of the Allied Expeditionary Force. This landing is but the opening phase of the campaign in Western Europe. Great battles lie ahead. I call upon all who love freedom to stand with us now. Keep your faith staunch. Our arms are resolute. Together we shall achieve victory.
The invasion of France on June 6, 1944 was a triumph of intelligence, coordination, secrecy and planning. Ultimately successful in large due to the preparedness and bravery of the troops.
They had been trained to concert pitch and they were superb shape physically, all of them. But they were all eager for D-Day, for the starting line. They were on the starting line.
Military troops were put through their paces with rigorous invasion rehearsals and forced training sessions.
There was a Royal Ulster Rifles sergeant there, and he'd come out of Dunkirk, and he really put us through our paces. Forced marches and God knows what, you know. 10 miles across tank training grounds and all that sort of thing. And he told us that we were going to fight the best fighting machine in the world, and if we weren't up to it, we would go under.
Amongst the troops, excitement and anticipation built in the days, weeks and months of drills and training.
Not so much frightened, I think, as excited, wondering what was going to happen and what lay ahead of us. It was something new, although we'd practiced for many, many months, battle drill and so forth. It was still high-pitched excitement, really.
It was excitement, but there was a lot of boredom. We didn't know, we knew what we'd got to do, but we didn't know when. And that was the thing, that was the most boring part, I found.
Precision trained and ready to go, the troops knew what they had to do. They knew they were to embark upon a great crusade. They knew the eyes of the world would be watching. They knew liberty was at stake for the oppressed people of Europe and the free world. Never in military history has any campaign been so long in the planning. So long anticipated and so long discussed as the Second Front. The hard part for these brave soldiers, sailors and airmen came in the waiting and not knowing when the call to action would come. In the spring of 1944, General Eisenhower had to make one of the most important decisions of World War II. Hundreds of thousands of Allied servicemen awaited his orders to begin Operation Overlord, the invasion of Europe. Eisenhower had already delayed Overlord for a month and postponed other military operations to allow the Allies enough time to build and gather together the landing craft they needed. He now set a date, June 5th, 1944. Late on the evening of June 2nd, 1944, Eisenhower, his top generals, and British Prime Minister Winston Churchill met to review the weather forecast. The news was not good. D-Day, June 5th, promised cloudy skies, rain and heavy seas. Eisenhower decided to wait another day to see whether the forecast might improve. Less than 24 hours before the scheduled invasion, the forecast indicated that the rain would stop and there would be breaks in the clouds by mid-afternoon on June 5th. Eisenhower decided to change the date for D-Day to June 6th. The Allies used many different tactics in order to fool the Germans to ensure that the invasion had every chance of success. A series of elaborate deceptions were developed, all in the words of Winston Churchill, designed to provide a bodyguard of lies. Vendetta and Ferdinand were false invasions in the Western Mediterranean, and Ironside was an invasion of France from the Bay of Biscay. Zeppelin was an equally false invasion of the Balkans, and was so successful that historians continued to debate Churchill's desire to invade the Balkans rather than France. The fifth deception, Fortitude, had two parts. Fortitude North was the invasion of Norway, and Fortitude South was the invasion of France at the Pas de Calais. While each deception operation had a degree of success, Fortitude South was the key deception of when and where the D-Day invasion would actually occur. It made sense for a variety of reasons. The distance from Dover to the Pas-de-Calais was the shortest across the notoriously difficult English Channel. It was the shortest route to the heart of Germany, which resulted in quick turnaround time for ships and air cover. There were 3 large harbours in the area: Dunkirk, Calais and Boulogne. The beaches and terrain around the Pas-de-Calais were ideal for supporting such an invasion. Also, Fortitude South had the advantage of being the plan Adolf Hitler wanted to believe would occur. Indeed, Hitler had planned to use the same route in the opposite direction for Operation Sea Lion, the aborted German plan to invade Great Britain. The complexity of the deceit and trickery aided and abetted the most organised and successful campaign in World War II history. On the night before the amphibious landings, 23,000 US and British paratroopers landed in France behind the German defensive lines by parachute and glider. Under overall command of General Eisenhower and on the ground of British General Bernard Montgomery, Allied troops landed on 5 beaches, codenamed Omaha, Gold, Juno, Sword and Utah. The invasion force of more than 155,000 troops included 50,000 vehicles, nearly 7,000 naval craft, and more than 11,500 aircraft supported the invasion. The Germans, under the command of Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, had deployed 5 infantry divisions, 1 airborne division and 1 tank division along the Normandy coast and held the advantage in battle positioning. The Allies had an overwhelming advantage in naval and air power. On D-Day alone, the Allies flew 14,000 sorties. The German Air Force managed only 500. The success of the amphibious landings depended on the establishment of a secure lodgement from which to expand the beachhead to allow the build-up of a well-supplied force capable of breaking out.
The sea was black with ships. As we moved into the open sea, you could hardly call it open, because from one end of it seemed to be one end of the channel to the other, were these ships of all descriptions. We thought we could not lose the war, that this is just, there's never been an armada like this. I'd never imagined anything so tremendous.
An important part was the isolation of the invasion routes and beaches from any intervention by the German Navy, the Kriegsmarine. The responsibility for this was assigned to the Royal Navy's Home Fleet. There were 2 principal perceived German naval threats. The first was surface attack by German capital ships from anchorages in Scandinavia and the Baltic Sea. This did not materialise. The second perceived major threat was that of U-boats transferred from the Atlantic. Air surveillance from 3 escort carriers and RAF Coastal Command maintained a cordon well west of Land's End. Few U-boats were spotted. Most of the escort groups were moved nearer to the landings. Further efforts were made to seal the western approaches against German naval forces from Brittany and the Bay of Biscay. Minefields, naval and air patrols, radar and effective bombing raids on enemy ports closed the Straits of Dover.
When we were about 100 yards out, he said, right, we're going in now, and full speed ahead, hit the beach.
Planners chose the Normandy beaches because they lay within range of air cover and were less heavily defended than the obvious objective of the Pas-de-Calais. Men were sent in by parachute and by glider, and on this side of the channel, through binoculars and gun sights, German soldiers could see coming their way the greatest armada anyone had ever seen. In the lead were hundreds of landing craft, carrying brave and frightened men. Only the ones who made that crossing can know what it was like. They tell of the pitching deck, the whistles of shells from the battleships behind them, the white jets of water from enemy fire around them, and then the sound of bullets hitting the steel ramp that was about to fall. One GI later said, "As our boat touched sand and the ramp went down, I became a visitor to hell." Hitler's Atlantic Wall was composed of mines and tank obstacles, trenches and jutting cliffs, gun emplacements and pillboxes, barbed wire, machine gun nests, and artillery trained accurately on the beach. 6 divisions were to land on the first day, 3 US, 2 British and 1 Canadian. 2 more British and 1 US division were to follow up after the assault division had cleared the way through the beach defences. On Sword Beach, the regular British infantry came ashore with light casualties. The Canadian forces that landed on Juno Beach faced heavy batteries of machine gun nests, pillboxes, other concrete fortifications, and a seawall twice the height of the one at Omaha Beach. Juno was the second most heavily defended beach on D-Day, next to Omaha. At Gold, the casualties were also quite heavy, because the Germans had strongly fortified a village on the beach.
The 716th Division, the German division, they weren't the best of troops. They were the sort of, what's they cannon fodder.
Casualties on Utah Beach, the westernmost landing zone, were the lightest of any beach, with 197 out of the roughly 23,000 troops that landed. At Omaha Beach, now known as Bloody Omaha, the Americans faced the veteran German 352nd Infantry Division, one of the best trained on the beaches. 2,200 casualties resulted. Despite heavy losses, by end of day June 6th, Allied troops had gained a foothold at Omaha. The landing craft Vehicle Personnel, LCVP or Higgins boat, played an important role in the Normandy invasion. This was the landing craft used to land troops directly into the sandy teeth of the most heavily fortified German sector, Omaha Beach. Designer Andrew Higgins, a fire-tempered Irishman from Louisiana, was positive once the war broke out that there would be a need among the US Navy for thousands of small boats, and was also sure that steel would be in short supply. In a common moment of eccentricity, Higgins bought the entire 1939 crop of mahogany from the Philippines. Higgins struggled for years to convince the Navy of the need for small wooden boats. Finally, he signed the contract to develop his LCVP. President Eisenhower, in a 1964 interview, stated, "Andrew Higgins is the man who won the war for us. If Higgins had not designed and built those LCVPs, we never could have landed over an open beach. The whole strategy of the war would have been different." On D-Day itself, the Allies landed 11 divisions on the French coast, but failed in reaching their planned objective of linking the beachheads or driving inland to a distance of 9 miles. At the end of the afternoon, the beach was under control, but frequently German snipers opened fire on the landing troops or on the casualties awaiting their evacuation towards England. Within 5 days, on June the 11th, Allied troops overcame German resistance to unite the invasion beaches into one large beachhead. On July 25th, Allied troops broke out of the Normandy beachhead near the town of St. Lo and began to pour into northern France.
We were shelled and mortared and don't do whatever, but I was surprised how far we actually got in. There was a lot of fighting that went on, but I was still surprised how far we got. I didn't think we would get off the beaches.
By mid-August, Allied troops had encircled and destroyed much of the German army in Normandy in the Falaise pocket.
Ich bin im Februar 40 Soldat geworden, war also bis dahin ja, ein Vierteljahre Soldat. Das Thema Gefangenschaft hat es nie gegeben, weder im Rekrutenunterricht noch sonst irgendwo. Nie wurde von Gefangenschaft gesprochen. Das gab es für einen deutschen Soldaten nicht. Und in meiner Russlandzeit, glaube ich, hätte ich mich wahrscheinlich nicht ergeben.
Spearheaded by General George Patton's Third Army, the Allies then raced across France. On August the 25th, Free French forces liberated Paris. On September 16, US troops reached the border of Germany. It had been a grim fight. 6 weeks of battle had left the Germans disheartened and susceptible to any further blow the Allies might deliver. The days had been filled with mud, heartache and pain for the Allies as well. From the very beginning, little had seemed to go right. As a result, the effort had only a marginal effect on the developing battle. Over the days that followed, rather than withdrawing beyond the Seine, as Allied planners had expected, the Germans had hung on tenaciously, taking brutal losses, but inflicting them upon the Allies as well. Meanwhile, Montgomery's careful plan for the attack had begun to unravel on D-Day itself. His forces failed to take Caen, the key to further operations in the open country to the south. Attacking time and again as the campaign developed, they had nonetheless held the cream of the German force in place. As for the Americans, the landing on Omaha Beach had been a near disaster, averted only by the courage of unsung sailors and soldiers. When air attacks and naval gunfire had failed to silence German guns, and the momentum of the assault had begun to lag, those heroes had pushed their frail landing craft to shore, despite the traps and obstacles blocking their way. Rallying to the directions of their commanders, they had then climbed the bluffs overlooking the beach and advanced inland, often at the cost of their own lives.
The intensity of was the thing, the noise and the firing and the organisation. I mean, they say D-Day was 4 years in planning, 2 years in organising, 1 day in execution, and that was it. It was all happening on that day, it seemed.
Even so, enough went well for the campaign to succeed. Roosevelt, Marshall, Eisenhower, Churchill and Montgomery were master communicators who bonded an unwieldy coalition into an extraordinary fighting machine. In the end, it was the heroism of infantrymen who rose day and night to the challenge, despite almost overwhelming fear and fatigue, that afforded the critical margin for success.
When we were young, there was a lot left to the imagination. Today they've got television.
Yes, right.
They've seen the Gulf War, they've seen the Falklands, and they find it very difficult to relate what they've seen on television to the reality that we experience.
The loss of France would deprive Germany not only of a major source of raw resources and labour, but also of seaports that had long sheltered its U-boats, and of radar sites that had afforded early warning of Allied bomber attacks. More important, it would provide the Allies with the secure base they needed to launch their final offensive against the German heartland.
It would have been the end for all of us, of life as we knew it. It was really a tremendous crusade, and it came off.